His Royal Highness, who's representing His Majesty the King, Prince Mhlaba, His Excellency, the Prime Minister, His Royal Highness, Prince Masitela, the Honorable Ministers present, the High Commissioner for South Africa and other diplomats who might be here, the Masilela family, all distinguished guests who are present here, ladies and comrades, nina nonke nabekunene malangeni amahle. Allow me to say a few words on this important occasion. But I would want to say I was supposed to be with a comrade of mine, Comrade John Kadimeng, who couldn't make it because of the ailment at his family. He was going to say something because he stayed with the Masilela family for many years, and he wrote the foreword to the book. And is a comrade I've been with in many situations. Xa ke sila sisekhaya kangwane asikho ekuhambeni. Sekhama sila. Abantu bokuqala beza lapha kangwane ngenxa yokuphatha kabi abacindezele eSouth Africa. Babezele ukuzofihla ikhanda. It was a place of refuge in the early 60s, and they were warmly welcomed by the Swazi people. Later, Swaziland became both the refuge and the operational country, given its borders with South Africa. There was no alternative. It had to be an operational area. Kuningi ke sokufunda lapha kangwane. Uma wawuzwa ngendaba amaSwazi adume pha kwaZulu ukuthi mahle amaSwazi. Zinhle intombi zaseSwazini. Andike mahle ngempela malangeni. Sabaleka lento mangikhuluma kancane ngaleli bhuku because that aspect comes in very handy. Ngenkathi ojabu behla benyuka apha. Ugeneral lobekhuluma apha. Ebhukweni ngithi lapha ngasekuqaleni likhuluma ngoThabo Mbeki noJacob Zuma noAlbert Dlomo. Lendo ngidisihambile uChicks Nkosi ngoba bengisathi ngizomkhumbuza. Wakwa ngiphuzisa iCoca-Cola yeza cisha phuma ngamadlebe. Sihlele George Hotel kuphuzwa. Angiphuzi mina. Yilo ngi-order iCoca-Cola nje. Ngithi kuyena hayi mfo ayikaphele yami athi uma ngi-order ngithi fill up the glasses wonke umuntu. Ngagcina ngenqwaba yeCoca-Cola phambi kwami. Ngingazi uba ngizoyithini. Uma sekuhanje uthi engikuthengile kufuneka kuqedwe la. Ngekho umuntu ozohamba engaqedanga. Bengithi ngizomkhumbuza lokho. There are many things that we can say about Swaziland. Good moments, good memories, and sad ones. And some of them very difficult. Some of them would not want to remember. When Elias sent the manuscript for me to check whether there were any sensitive things that don't need to be said in public, I was very happy because there are things we may not want to talk about. And I was keen to check whether there were any things out of order, and they were all in order. Because there are many things we can talk about in Swaziland with regard to its role to the liberation struggle of our country. There are light moments, there are serious moments. Ngelinye ilanga ngisula imoto lapha eFairview ngihlala khona uMgqibelo ntambama kudlula intombi uDlamini uvunula ufaka ihiyap yadlula ithi ngisula imoto yami la sengithi awusabona ntombazana ithi awusabona weZuma ngithi yebo hawe yaphi na siyosoma ngithi nani sisomi ngiphinda ngaphendula ngathi awazi wayikhuluma into enkulu ntombazana hawu ayinamahloni ntombazana sengihlangana elinye ikhehle kwakuthiwa undlangisa ngithi yekhom intombi yaza ngikhulumela isimanga ngithi ngiyayibingelela ithi iyosoma ngoba thina sisoma ngithi kodwa isho lanti uthi hayi ibithi yoshela ngoba nanesheli kanti ngesizulu kushenye into ngathi hey umuntu uzasifunda iswazi kahle njengekathi kuleli nkuleka likhizwe ngake ngaba nelinye igama solo ngaba uJacob Zuma nje kulapha kuphela ngaba negama elithe phecelezi uJames Nhlapho enbenginele ngisho njalo nje abathabe kunene awusigegede angikwazi nami ukudlula lapho kusigegede ukuthi ukudlula kuthweni ngaliqanjwa leli gama ama comrade because bathanda banomsaka abantu baseSwazini ukubuza ukuthi ungowaka bani ke wena so babe ngafuna ukungichaza ukuthi uJacob Zuma bathi uJames Nhlapho ngalithola kanjalo. But seriously speaking, uma ukhuluma ngeSwaziland, of all the countries in Southern Africa that contributed in a very unique way, you are talking about a country that I believe many of us, particularly the comrades, would have to find an opportunity to tell their own stories. Some of them are touched upon by the book. Swaziland has a history with South Africa because we are the same people, basically. But it also has a history politically with the ANC. As you heard, at the formation of the ANC, Swaziland Kingdom was represented and made a contribution. And particularly, King Sobhuza was very proud of this and was very much aware of it. And thus, because of his vision and understanding, he allowed us to operate in Swaziland. And he did it in a Swazi way, because you couldn't pin him down. Nobody could go and say, Inkosi iyasivumela ukuthi sisebenze la. Because wayebeka isiswati. And he was very much aware of what was happening. And he was also aware that we were not all the same. There were those, as it was a case even within South Africa, who were bought by the enemy. And there were many. And many of the attacks that happened here in Swaziland were as a result of the information given by those who worked for the enemy. But he said also to President Tambo, ukuthi uma senisebenza la nazi ukuthi amaswazi ayisupporta ngokugcwele ANC, kodwa nazi ukuthi akhona ahlafuna ngemhlathe emibili, hlafuna eBloemfontein, ahlafuna nala kwami. Nikubheke lokho. Just a warning that as you proceed, you must know you are dealing with human beings. He was a very profound king. And I think it was because of his vision, his approach to things, that made us feel comfortable. I had an opportunity today to be blessed by His Majesty, the King. And we talked about a few of these things. And I remembered a story of a comrade who was here, Comrade Albert Lomo, who worked with me and the president in South Africa, Thabo Mbeki. Besithanda uhlala phe George, and it is in the book, and I think Elias asked a question, ukuthi kazi le mali okuphuzwa ngayiphumaphi. Ngangiphuza iCoca-Cola mina baba. Ayibizi kakhulu. So bobabili uDlomo noMbeki bangena from Mozambique, baphethe suitcase, an ordinary looking suitcase. Kanti fihla izinto eziserious lapha ngaphansi. Bayayazi lamadoda esasisebenza nawo la. Kuthi wawufihla pha esuitcase into enzima. Lize lithi malimile licheck. Mangabe ngoba lifaka into encane nje licheckiswe yini. Base befaka iliterature ngaphezulu. The problem was that the literature was communist literature. So amaphoyisa kangwanathi again mina kancane ke sozibheka lezi ncwadi azise stake. Lahlala isutcase lokubetha awukeni sinike bo isutcase lethu sifuna lezi ncwadi ziyadlula ngoba sasiye siqamba manga izinto ziyadlula noma engadluli. Hayi bathi sizonika kwenzeka ke upresident waya elusake yo report. Mina ngangena ngaphakathi ekhaya wasala yedwa uDlomo. Angene nje for 2 weeks. Uthe ehlele George namaphoyisa ala kangwana. Uyawaxoxa ukuthi hey nini. Nihleli nesuitcase lapha estake. Lapha loqhuma khona lela police station yobe graveyard. Athe amaphoyisa uthini? Uthini Dlomo? Wale ngentshandaba. Hlalani nje nesuitcase lethu. Neyosola laba bosinda. Amaphoyisa aqonde esuitcase. Alithola nje ukuthi ngempela liyesinda khipha incwadi. Noma selisele lilodwa lisesinda. Babiza uDlomo vula. Kwaphuma ama explosives lapho nepistol eyodwa itete. Angikho ngise South Africa mangifike eborder ngiyabuya ngiyakhokha ukuthi uDlomo phakathi. Kwenze njani? Ubanjiwe. Galela suitcase. Kwaphuma izinto la so amaphoyisa ake siya report enkosini ukuthi sibambile kulabafana bakaThambo khona simbambile usitshene ukuthi kunento ezosibulala wakhipha ke uthi ke ushilo beyikhona ngempela suitcase bathi impela nangempela nafike nayithola lezi zinto impela sitholile uthi phone imbambelana angathi umuntu enisitile ihlele ngozini. But khipani mfana kaThambo khipani. Sambona nangengena, hawu Hlomo kwenze njani? Ayisengikhishiwe. Inkosi ke leyo yakangwane eyayazi ukuphendula izinto. Ngake ngayizwa ihlasela amaphoyisa lawo umgwaqo. Ngelinye ilanga ivele ku TV ithi angiwathi ukuthi amaphoyisa ayintelani lento. Abeka ispeed trap bese casha. Kuba awanqandi ingodi because fanele amobala abantu bababona. Bacashelane. Very great logic. But there are many things we could talk about in Swaziland that I believe we would do so. Firstly, with regard to the comrades, there are many comrades here who passed through Swaziland, who went through a lot. And some of the comrades who passed through Swaziland and went for operations were arrested and went to Robben Island. And some were arrested and sentenced to death and indeed hanged. Solomon Mahlangu passed through here, and many others. There are many who died here in Swaziland, poisoned, some of them assassinated. I believe this book begins to say to all of us, it's time for us to tell the story of our struggle. All sides. About ourselves, about the guerrillas of the ANC, MK members. What type of people were they? Their bravery, their large understanding in Swaziland as to how should they behave for the sake of our struggle and of our movement. Among the places that will feature not only in the book written by Elias, house number 43. I think there are many other houses. Flat number 8, for an example, will feature. Come Again will feature. And I'm not talking about lapho ke jabwena ngicasha khona. Izindlu ezingena number, ngidazina number lezo. And we'll also have to write about the route between here and Namash. More than I think Comrade Elias has done. The Lutuli Highway at Namash. The 5-minute walk at Namash. The 8-hour walk. Abanye babehamba kuzokhumuka inzipho. Bengajwayela ukuhamba ngoba bajwayela ukuhamba emadolobheni uma ekehamba ngalondlela ufuna ujimele. About prisons, I doubt there is a single police station or prison that did not see our cadres in one way or the other. Ngake ngabanjwa namashi. Ngibanjwa unyezi ubalele ngaphula umthetho ngoba lento ukuphula umthetho wrong. Kufuneka ngehliswe emotweni ngicashe kuze kushona inyanga. Ngathi mangehla kwathi vumbu uLittle John bayamazi abaningi. Ufuna ukubuyela emva ngale moto engifika ngayo. Ngathi how is the coast mfana? Wathi ku clear. Ngathi awuseqedile mangisheshe ngafika ngale kuba ngcono ngenqamula. Ngithe ngisathi emahlangeni ngezwe ngathi khona abantu abezala ngemva. Ngashesha ukuhamba bashesha. Ngithe mangithi ngezwe ngombethi itanditulo. Awungasho ngasekonakele. Ngathi ngiyathatha ngejubane kwavuka insizwa ngaphambili ngezwe ikhokha ibhamzithi kunendlela but awusimthathe lo ungowaphi ngathi awu kuwakhona unquma lo wakhona awuswazi samsitshekile sizwakali kahle ngabona babona amasosha lawo. I said nokuthi singabe sabasa enkambini sibase police station. angigijimanga mababa kwanqomuka isicathulo sasala ngasicosha ngiba ngifaka inzimba okokuqala nje ngithema ngifike kodwa ke simseshanga ngathi mangithi but bathinta labezwa kunzima but kwaphuma emagazini eMakarov lathi soje hey uphethe bamlo what abantwana lapho mama labantwana ngabona ayikho lento ngathi no nasi la ngabakhombisa alala ngeke ngikuxoxele kwenzeka lapho kufuna incwadi uma ngifika lapha epolice station ngihlangana nephoyisa le ayobizwa lithi ho babe Zuma uwe kanti lo na usuzenzela abafana weqaltingo aqamba amanye amanga. I think we need to write about Swaziland and the operations, as well as not just us. I think our comrades and friends who are Swazi nationals, who participated fully in the struggle, they've got to write, because they've got stories to write. I used to say to the guerrillas, aliki guerrilla lo mfanele ngalala ehlathini. After all, umufune ungaboshwa, you must pretend to be umfana wendawo. Ojabuke ngangibanike license ukuthi benze into eyiningi la kangwane. But that was important as a contribution to us. Not only in that way. There were many Swazi nationals who were sent to South Africa with the most dangerous things, who were brave to do so. And I think those stories must be written. I believe as we move forward, as we begin to settle down, not to fear to talk about things that happened many years ago, we'll realize the need that we need to tell the story of the struggle and the liberation of South Africa. All of us. That it did not just come because one day F.W. de Klerk decided to be kind enough and said, let us unband the organizations. It was after a lot of pain. When I read this book, I was touched. Firstly, because it talked about comrades I worked with who died here in Swaziland, and some who died in South Africa. One of the moving stories was a girl who was caught in the crossfire, who did not know that these friends were actually guerrillas, and was caught in an attack that devastated her, I think, almost for the rest of her life. And she went back home. She was not an exile. She had come here to study. Her studies were disrupted forever. And I read a story that touched me of the Pretoria bombers. It's not what happened to them, it's what happened to their families thereafter, probably up to this day, according to the book. And I began to say, we who worked with people, whether here or in Botswana or in Lesotho, anywhere, we needed to remember and trace our steps to find some of these people who made a contribution, who are not just unsung heroes, who are not known, who could only be known by us who worked with them. They were great, greater perhaps than many of us who speak today in peace times. We have a lot to say because there is peace. There is no threat for arrest or death. People have taken a decision to participate consciously to ensure that South Africa is free. We still have to salute those comrades that the book talks about, Abo Viva, I don't think we've done enough to recognize their contribution. This book reminds us, we who are living, particularly those who know these comrades, can't blame those who don't know them. How do we raise their names and their contribution? They are not known. They don't appear anywhere. They will never appear anywhere if we don't do it. We still have to tell how brave were MK cadres. One of the cadres that we talk about a great deal, and I said something about him in the funeral of General Spuenyanda, was his brother, who died here because an informer had been discovered, and he phoned his handlers in Piet Retief to say, come this evening and kill him. And he thought this was a comrade. And they slept in one house, and yet he knew. He had planned, he had told the police exactly where he would be sleeping. And he was killed. There are many who died in that manner that we have not recognized. I think we have a duty, all of us, including the Swazi nationals, because this is what happened here. One of them was Zuma, who was driving in the morning taking his wife Ujabu to work. And these kids were standing on the veranda waiting for him to come back and pick them up. As he ignited the car, the bomb exploded, took his head off and his wife off. When they were buried, they had no heads. Nobody has told the story about these, including their kids, where they are. Many know the man who was Wakula Boy supporter and Wanderers, Uduma. I was a fan of Swat. Who was blown off his arm. Had to keep a parcel with post box.